everybody, it's Teresa. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to be doing something quite different today. I'm going to attempt to do a bead weaving project. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see what I'm doing because they are very tiny little beads, and with my big old hands in the way and the way I tremble, I just don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. But I had a lady who saw a bracelet on my Facebook page that I had made, and it was like this. I don't have that bracelet, I sold it, but it was like this. It was with super duo beads, and super duo beads are 2-hole beads. You can do this, it's got leather on the outside. You can do this with any beads. You can do it with round beads. This is a very long multi-wrap bracelet. Of course, I'm not going to do that today. This section here is with 6mm beads and some seed beads. That's what I'm going to use today. This section is with Tila beads and seed beads. I've got one here. This is using tile beads and seed beads and 6mm beads. You can mix it up and use all kinds of different beads. I've got one here that uses super duos, and then here these are 8mm beads. I actually did this in a macrame. It's called ladder stitch, but you can do it with any size beads, any shape beads, 1-hole beads, 2-hole beads. It's just limitless you can do it with. But I don't think I need to start out trying to do it with a 2-hole bead, because that would be really frustrating. 2-hole beads are a little bit harder to do this with. It's easier to start out with 1-hole beads and then work up to 2-hole beads. And so I'm just going to show you the technique with 1-hole beads and some 6mm beads and some seed beads, and we'll see how this goes. Now, if you all don't want to watch this, if you're not interested in bead weaving, I completely understand. The first time I saw somebody bead weaving with a needle and a thread, I thought, okay, no, that's not happening. I'm never going to be doing that. But then I ended up trying it, and I liked it. And like I said, it's pretty much all I've been doing for the last 7 years. But if you don't want to watch, I completely understand. Especially, it's probably going to be difficult with the way I tremble and everything. But if you don't watch it, if you want to just avoid this video, I just hope that you don't leave me forever. Because I don't think I'll be doing a lot of bead weaving on camera, because it's just hard with the way I am. This is my fire line. It's a fishing line. It's 8-pound is usually my go-to. I use a lot of it. As you can see, this is a 125-yard spool, and I usually get 300-yard spools. I think I found this on sale. A tip: if you buy this, if you buy it at a beading store, it's going to cost more than if you buy it at a sporting goods store. I always buy mine from sporting goods stores. I've got my needles. I only use tulip needles. I have found that they work better for me. I can thread them better. The eyes of them seem to be a little bit bigger than the other beading needles. This is size 11. These are size 10. They don't bend as badly as the other beading needles I've used. They will bend some, but they're most likely they will most likely break before they will bend much, because that's how they are. They don't bend as much as the other beading needles, and I like that. I've got my scissors. I've got my beading awl, because I'm probably going to need that to guide my knot here in a minute. I've got my flat nose pliers, and that's all I'm using as far as tools. I've got about a 2-foot piece of 1.5mm leather here. Sometimes I use 2, but I think I'm out of 2mm leather. I've got my button that I'm going to use for my closure. And my husband picked out this button because it's got a little fleur-de-lis or whatever I don't know how to say that on it. And he said I should use it because my little New Orleans shot glass has them on them. And I'm always showing y'all my shot glass, so I should use that. So that's what I'm using. So I'm just it's a shank button. So, well, first of all, I'm going to thread my needle. I've got about 3 feet of thread here. I usually work with about 6 feet of thread, but if you're just starting out, it's not likely you're going to be able to handle that much thread. And the first time I heard somebody say 6 feet of thread, I thought, okay, what? I mean, that's crazy. But you eventually get to where you can handle it no problem. So I've only got about 3 feet here though, because I didn't want y'all to have to watch me pulling through that much thread. I'm going to try to zoom in here so y'all can see what I'm doing. I know it's hard to see, but this thread is not flat. It's a little bit rounded, and it's almost impossible to thread unless you take your flat nose pliers and squish the end of it, and that will make it flat and makes it easier to thread through your needle. So I'm going to thread my needle on camera for the first time ever and hope that it works. Okay, yeah. The bead gods are with me for a minute. I hope they stay with me. Okay, now I'm going to take my leather and I'm going to put it through the shank of my button. And I'm going to bring my ends together and find the center. And I'm just going to tie an overhead knot. Take my beading awl. I'm going to try to guide my knot down close to the button, but not too close, because you want your button to be able to move around and such, but that's good. I think that's good. So I'm just going to pull on each piece of leather until it's good and tight. I've still got room there for my button to move. Now I'm just going to take my thread and I'm going to tie it to my leather. Just tighten an overhand knot. If I can figure out how to make an overhand knot. Okay, here we go. Okay. Now I'm gonna leave about 6 inches, I guess that is, of tail, because I'm gonna thread that in later. I'm gonna push my thread up to my knot, and then I'm gonna tie another knot the other way. I think it's right over left, left over right, but I can never do that, so I just turn the thread around. I just switch hands. Okay, so now I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to take my 11-0 here, and I'm going to start out with my 11-0 because I want to widen the space between my, now you can use a loom, and if you can use a loom, that would, I'm sure, make it much easier. I believe I own every loom that has ever been invented, and I just cannot use them. I have no control on the loom. I don't know why. I have tried and tried. I've got the beetle untying station. I've got the jewel loom. I've got them all, and I just have never been able to. I can't control it and keep it the way I need to keep it unless I have it in my hand. But if you can use a loom, that would be a good thing, because if you use a loom, the sides of your leather will stay straighter, but I can usually manage to keep it fairly straight by holding it. Now I have got my needle here now. I'm gonna come up, let me get untangled here. Okay, I'm gonna come up with my needle. I'm gonna come up, let's see, let me zoom in some more. I'm gonna come up between my pieces of leather. I'm going to pick up one seed bead. I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to try to position it between my pieces of leather on its side. Now, I'm going to go over and under the bottom piece of leather. I'm going to catch my seed bead there, go through my seed bead, pull my thread. I'm going to pull it pretty tight because I don't want there to be a lot of thread showing. I'm going to push it up close to my knot. And just for these first few, I'm going to go back through them another time to reinforce them because they're the first ones. So I'm going to go over the top piece of leather, put my needle through the middle, go back through the seed bead, I think. This is hard when I don't have it right up here next to my face like I usually do. Well, I just cannot get through there. There it is. And then I'm going to go over the bottom piece of leather, under, back through the seed bead. Well, I knew this was going to be hard, but I know it's going to be this hard, okay? Try not to pierce your leather. Okay, now I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go back between the leather. Got my thread coming up between the two pieces of leather. I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads. I'm going to put them between my 2 pieces of leather. I'm going to go under the bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, I think. Okay. Put my seed beads there, go under the bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, through my beads, pull them up against this first bead I did, pull my thread so there's no slack. And now I'm going to take my thread and go bring it up between the pieces of leather again. Now what I'm doing is I'm widening out my leather to accommodate for my 6mm bead. And I know, because I've done this before, that 4 11/0s is about the same height as one 6mm bead. So I'm going to work up to 4. But since this appears to be kind of loose still, I'm going to go back through this again, these 2 again, to stabilize them. And they're not straight. Back. Straighten them up. Go back under my leather, through the seed beads, over the top piece of leather, and come up between my 2 pieces of leather. So my thread's coming up between my 2 pieces of leather. I'm going to pick up 3 seed beads, drop them down to my thread. I'm going to put them between the leather. I'm going to go under the bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, push them up against the other seed beads, tighten up my thread, bring my needle up between, over the top piece of leather and up between my pieces of leather. Now I'm going to do 4 seed beads. Drop them down to the bottom of my thread, put them between the 2 pieces of leather, bring my needle under the bottom piece of leather, always under the bottom piece, and over the top piece, under this bottom piece of leather, through all the 4 of the seed beads, through all 4 of the seed beads, pull my thread through, push my beads up against the other beads, tighten, and I try to be mindful of my leather as I go to make sure it's not getting too wonky there. Now I'm going to go over the top piece of leather, through the middle of the pieces of leather. Now I'm going to take one of my 6mm beads, and I'm going to pick him up, and I'm going to put him between my pieces of leather. I'm going to go under the bottom piece of leather, through the bead, pull my thread through. Now I'm going to go over the top piece of leather, through the middle of the pieces of leather. Now I'm going to pick up 4 more seed beads, bring these down to the bottom of my thread, put them between my pieces of leather, go under the bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, pull my thread good and tight so there's no slack, so there's not a lot of thread showing. Bring my needle over the top piece of leather and between the pieces of leather up through the middle. See, my leather's trying to get wonky because I just cannot use a loom. Okay, now I'm gonna pick up 4 more seed beads because I'm gonna put 2 rows of seed beads between each big bead. Bring the beads down to the, put them between the leather, go over and under the bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, tighten, push these up here against these others and tighten so you don't see a lot of thread. You don't want to push them up there too close though, because they'll buckle. Now I'm going to go over my top piece of leather, up through the middle of the 2 pieces of leather. I pick up another 6mm bead, put it down between the leather, go over the bottom piece of leather and under, through the bead, pull my thread through and tighten, and then go over the top piece of leather, up between the leather, pick up 4 more seed beads, drop them to the bottom of my thread. Whoop, I didn't get up between it that time. Drop them down to the thread, or down to the bottom of my thread, go over the bottom piece of leather, up and through the seed beads, pull, push them up there and tighten it up, and now over the top piece of leather and up between the pieces of leather. All you're doing is making figure 8s around your leather. So I'm picking up 4 more seed beads, drop them down to my leather, bottom of my thread, put them between the pieces of leather, go under my bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, pull. Oops. Well, I didn't do something right because they all fell off. Let's try that again. Okay. Up through the middle of the leathers. Pick up 4 seed beads. Bring it down to the leather, put it between the leather, go under the bottom piece of leather, through the seed beads, pull through, straighten them up a little, tighten so there's no thread showing. Now the next thing I'm going to do is another big 6mm bead. Now I'm going to stop a minute here and look at these last clip and see if you could see at all what I was doing, and I'll be back. Okay, I was out of frame quite a bit and zoomed in real close, so I'm not, but I think I was in frame enough that you were able to hopefully see what I was doing. I'm going to do just a couple more here, and then I'll do the rest of it off camera. The next thing I'm not hardly zoomed in as much this time, so maybe it'll help. I'm going to pick up my 6mm bead. I'm coming up between my leather. I'm going to put it between the leather. I'm going to go over the bottom piece of leather, through the bead, pull my thread, try to keep my leather from getting wonky. I'll go over the top piece of leather and back up through the middle. I'm going to pick up 4 more seed beads. Bring them down to the bottom of my thread. Put them between the pieces of leather. Go under the bottom piece of leather, through all 4 of the seed beads, pull my thread through, position them and tighten it. Now I'm going to come back up between the pieces of leather. I'm going to pick up 4 more seed beads. Drop them down to my leather. Well, I'm not between the leather, between the leather. Drop them down to the bottom of my thread. Position them between the leather. Go under this bottom piece of leather. Through all the seed beads, pull through, push them up here where they go, tighten my thread, straighten them up there, go over the top piece of leather, through the middle of the leathers, take another 6mm bead. Of course, you can do any pattern you want to. You can just do it all with 6mm beads. You don't have to fold seed beads at all. Put that between my pieces of leather. Go under the bottom piece of leather, through the bead, pull my thread through, position him where I want him and tighten, and then come on back over the top piece of leather and just continue on. Now I'm going to do the rest of this off camera so that you all are not having to be mad at me and scream at me and stuff. And then I'll come back and show you how we're going to finish it off. Okay, I've got down to as far as I think I need to go here. And what I've done here is I've just tapered down like I did at the beginning where I did 1, 2, 3, 4. I want it to match, so I'm going 4, 3, 2, and I'm going to do 1. I got to come up and under between my leather first. I'm up between my leather, take 1 of my seed beads, bring it down between the leather, go over the bottom leather, under, over and under the bottom leather, through the seed bead, and then I'm going to go back through that to stabilize it since it's the last one. And now to end off my thread, I'm going to go back, sew back through these last little seed beads here at the end. And I don't usually go around the leather, I just go up and down through the seed beads a few times, back and forth. And then I'm going to straighten this out here. I've got my beads a little too tight up in here. Move them. Spread them out a little bit before I end it off. And now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go under this thread. I know it's hard to see because the thread is black and the leather's brown, but I'm going to go under this thread bridge right here, and I'm going to pull my needle through, and I'm going to make a 1/2 inch knot. I'm just going to, well, untangle from around my leather first. Okay, I'm going to go up through this loop and slowly pull my knot down. And that makes a little knot there. And then I'm going to go through another bead. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go under this thread bridge. Pull my thread through. Don't get it tangled around my leather. Pull my thread through. Go through the loop. Slowly pull the knot down. If you pull it down too quick, it'll knot before you want it to. And I'm going to go back. Try to get back through these two. I usually make about 3 1/2 inch knots before I cut it off. I'm going to go under this thread bridge. Pull my thread through, go through the loop, slowly pull it down, make a knot there. Go back through beads again. It's getting tight in there because there's a lot of thread in there now. Try to straighten everything up. cut off. To straighten my beads up so they're not too bunched up. They're even. And now I'm going to go down here. I'm going to put a needle on this little tail here, and I'm going to weave it back in just like I weaved in this end down here, just now did, and then I'll be back. Okay, this is what I've got. I just put my needle on the tail that I had over here and threaded it in and tied it off like I did this other side. The beads will shift and move around some in here because there's only one piece of thread going through them. I just try and go back and get them as even as I can, make sure they're not bunched up and all that before I tie this last knot. And this is not the prettiest piece I've ever made, but it was even harder than I anticipated it was going to be doing it on camera. So I'm just going to tie a knot right here. And bring it down fairly close to the beads here. Pull on each cord. Straighten up my beads. And now I'm going to take my button and figure out how big of a space I need to leave for my button. So I'm going to tie my other knot about right here. Turns out I didn't have that much. I didn't have too much thread or leather after all. Probably should have cut off a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to just try this button again before I tie my knot too tight. That looks good. I'm just going to tie my knot here. And I'm going to cut off my ends. And you can put a little GS Hypo cement on the knot there if you want to. I probably will. I made the mistake one time of putting super glue on the knot, and super glue dries it really stiff, and it makes it uncomfortable to wear. So I would use GS Hypo cement. So let's see. Let me put it together here and see what it looks like. There we go. There's our little leather bracelet. I'm sorry this video was so long, y'all. It just, you know, bead weaving takes longer than other things, at least for me anyway. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope you haven't hated it. It's just hard to get this stuff done with the way I am and everything, but I wanted to do it because that lady had asked me to. So as usual, thank you all so much for joining me today, and I really appreciate those of you who have subscribed to my channel and watched my videos and the comments you leave. I have a website where I sell my jewelry. It's Teresa's Handmade Jewelry, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below in case you're interested, along with a link to my Facebook and Instagram and my email. If you haven't, I'd really love it if you'd subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. So until next time, I hope you all have a great day. Take care.